Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Jim and Frank's Thursday Throwdown!
Welcome, Jim, to another Thursday Throwdown.
Yes, sir.
I tell you, a couple of weeks ago, we did a cross band modulation type thing with Ozzy and Dio and Black Sabbath. And this time we're sticking with the same band, but two different singers.
Two different singers.
What do we have going on?
acdc, Highway to Hell versus Back in Black.
Now, when you think of acdc, I think those are the first two albums you think of.
Yes.
Right. And 1979, Highway to Hell, Bon Scott's final record with the band. It was a doozy.
I can't speak from total experience, but from what I've heard, and I've heard a good chunk of everything that came before that record.
Mm-hmm.
This was like the high point for them.
Yeah.
I think, as far as the Bon Scott years go.
I think they were on the verge of really breaking out here in America.
I think it kind of put them on the map here.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they're finally garnering some real airplay, I think.
And I have to be honest, through local radio, really got into AC/DC, like Powerage and those early records, but it was Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. They put a compilation record out by that name, and it had Big Balls, and a few other tunes on there from some of those earlier albums. And that's when I discovered AC/DC. And it wasn't not long after Highway to Hell came out. And oh my, what is the joke that Angus said? Oh, AC/DC, they put the same album out 11 times. And hey, don't you say that. We've put the same album out 12 times.
12 times, right?
So
you making the same record.
Yeah, you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And you love it or you don't. I mean, I don't think there's any middle road with AC/DC.
No.
Yeah. For both this album and Back in Black, recorded and produced by Mutt Lange.
Yeah. Highway to Hell was the first one that Mutt did with them. Came back and did Back in Black.
Do you find it interesting that that's the same producer that polished up Def Leppard so much, with all those layers upon layers of backing vocals and guitars and just stuff?
Yeah, it seems odd, doesn't it? At the same time, no.
It shows he knew how to work with what he had.
True.
He knew the sound AC/DC was looking for, what he wanted from them, and he got it.
Yeah, AC/DC is what it is.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you said.
Right.
I think Def Leppard were they didn't want to continue to be a heavy metal band so much.
Right. I agree.
They didn't want to be pigeonholed.
Right. Highway to Hell, Girls Got Rhythm, Touch Too Much. Those are the singles, 8 times platinum eventually. Pretty good for a Australian band, move to England, make their way to across the pond to the United States, and take over the radio airwaves.
I would say those first 6 songs on that record, Highway to Hell, Girls Got Rhythm, Walk All Over You, Touch Too Much, Beating Around the Bush, Shot Down in Flames. That's 6 powerhouse tunes.
Yes.
Right in a row.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Maybe my favorite song on the record, If You Want Blood, You Got It. A little farther down on side 2, but it's a great album.
Yeah, it really is.
It is a really great album.
And like I was saying, it's not overproduced. It's a minimalist album when you get down to it.
It is.
Right? It's just plug those guitars into the amps, get the drum, Phil Rudd doing probably the same beat 13 times in a row. It didn't matter. It was just they played, and he reminds me of Charlie Watts. Just solid beat,
On the money. Yeah.
yeah, and let it go.
Somebody was talking about his playing the other day. Somebody who had played with Phil, and they had finished up a song. And he said, I don't think you once hit the tom on that song. And he said, because it didn't need it.
Yeah, there it is.
Sometimes it's about what you leave out, right?
Right. And this album was getting airplay, and then the tragedy strikes, right?
Yeah.
Bon Scott
Tragically died in his car on a winter night, parked on the side of the road.
drank himself into a tizzy, passed out, and whatever gory details ensued after that.
I've heard two different stories.
Uh-huh.
One that he threw up.
Right.
Right. Choked. The other one I heard was that he crawled into the back seat to go to sleep because he didn't want to drive, and basically died of hypothermia because it was just so blasted cold. They were in London.
That's probably the story the parents heard.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know he was a
That's
heavy
true.
drinker. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate either way because the band was, like you said, I think they had some of the music ready for the follow-up album.
Yeah, that's what I had heard, that they had
I
already
don't-
had some of the Back in Black stuff ready to go.
And so, without skipping a beat, really, 1979, Highway to Hell, 1980, Here Comes Back in Black. And I, like many AC/DC fans, was a little cautious. What's gonna happen? How are you gonna, because Bon Scott had such an unusual singing voice, a screech almost.
Witty, actually a very witty lyricist.
Oh, great lyrics. Yes. Yeah. No, I think his lyrics were very even as a young teenager, probably went over my head majority of the time until later on.
Well, I mean, songs like Big Balls aside,
Oh,
but
right.
other songs,
Yeah.
way more subtle humor.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I prefer, but
I agree. I agree. And like I said, at the time, I may not have got what he was saying. I knew it sounded dirty. I knew it sounded just a little naughty, but I did not understand it until I got a little older.
yeah, plenty of double entendres
Right.
in the songs.
So then here we get Brian Johnson, who I had not heard of before that. He was in a band prior to. He'd actually even sung in commercials and did some jingle work.
Very, very clean vocals, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
Nothing like his AC/DC voice.
No. And he comes out screeching, and Back in Black hits, those the bell tolls and the whole bit. And you could tell right from the get-go that something was different, something was bigger. The sound got bigger. Again, Mutt Lange brought this thing, he gave it new life. And I think the band, even though the style of the guitar playing from Angus Young is never going to change, there was a vibe that was different on this record. Now, do you think that's because of Brian Johnson, or do you think that was the band as a whole?
I think a lot of it had to do with Brian, but people talking about that time years later was that, like, the Young brothers never really kind of got over Bon Scott's death,
Right.
in the sense that, like, they never talked about it. They never kind of dealt with the emotion of it.
Yeah.
Very stoic in that sense, I guess. But if you don't deal with that, if you don't give yourself the chance to mourn, it turned out some great art.
Right. 27 times platinum in the United States. How does a record do that? A rock and roll record?
Well, everybody bought it on LP, and then a few years later, everybody went out and bought it on CD.
Mm-hmm.
Guilty. If you have one AC/DC record in your collection, I'm gonna bet it's Back in Black.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I don't think they ever hit that plateau again.
No.
After that, the other stuff that came after, like what was it called? For Those About to Rock,
right.
Fly on the Wall, stuff like that. Just I don't think it ever hit that Back in Black plateau.
Right. I bought Back in Black on LP. I bought it on CD, and then I rebought it again on LP on 180 gram because I lost my first one. So I'm part of that. But You Shook Me All Night Long. What a song.
I never ever tire of that song.
No. Hell's Bells.
Matter of fact, if it comes on, I crank it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the guitars on that is just so fantastic.
Yeah.
The song Back in Black and Rock and Roll's Ain't Noise Pollution are the singles. And that whole album, I get a headache when I listen to it because I always play it too loud.
It sounds better loud for whatever reason.
It does, but I can't help myself. I want it as maximum level as possible, and it hurts after I'm done. My ears ring when it's over, and yet I go back and listen again.
It shouldn't hurt to be an AC/DC fan, man.
It shouldn't, but it sure does. Oh my goodness. Brian Johnson's voice. And a lot of people say this about Rob Halford also. It wears on you after a while. If you're not, if you, it's the same buzzsaw. And I'm mostly talking about their live albums. I don't care for Brian Johnson live. He gets a bit screechy, and that's a bit much for me. Rob Halford, and I know he redid the vocals on Unleashed in the East, but that particular album, he received some criticism for that. I think because the vocals were so much in front of everything. But I
still love that record.
One of my favorites also. But when you go back and think of Bon Scott, his voice, like I said, he was a bit screechy at times too.
Yeah, not everybody loves it. It's not for everybody.
Right. Who do you think was the better singer?
Oh, man, that's tough. I lean a little more towards Bon Scott. Mm-hmm. They're both great. I think they really found their audience with Brian Johnson.
Right.
And then there's a lot of people who they never heard AC/DC until Back in Black, right?
True.
So that's like kind of their, Brian Johnson's their guy.
Right. I like the collection of Bon Scott records better than the collection of Brian Johnson records as a whole.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, man, if you have to pick one, what direction are you going?
Well, I think overall, you got to go with the 27 times platinum.
Really?
Back in Black, yeah. Which it pains me to say it. I think as an album, I think it's a better album.
Yeah.
But I lean more towards the Bon Scott era.
That's my dilemma.
But as an album, I think that album is pretty close to just flawless.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Back in Black for the knockout. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Boy, that was very slim, dude. That was like in the 15th round.
Well, yeah, and like you say, when you take the totality of the work with Bon Scott, you can't touch it.
Yeah,
I agree. Back in Black comes around and watch this.
Yeah.
So, I think I've got Black Ice and a couple others on LP. The rest are CD.
Yeah, sure.
So, but I do like the Bon Scott era better.
Yeah. I think some of the earlier stuff was like a little hit and miss for me.
Right.
I mean, a lot of great tunes, right? Some of my favorite. I have far more favorite ACDC songs from Bon Scott than I do from Brian Johnson.
Yes, me too.
Right. Most of my favorite Brian Johnson songs
on
Back in
album.
Black. Yeah.
There it is. All right. Well, there we have it. I guess that'll do it. Again, a knockout for Back in Black. And it, like you said, it was a 15-round thing. This thing went the whole distance.
It went the whole distance, man.
And I wouldn't say, I'm sure ACDC's Highway to Hell knocked down Back in Black a couple times during this fight too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right.
Some of their best songs on
on
Highway to Hell, man.
What about you, the listener? Which album do you prefer?
Tell us what you think.
Back in Black. What is it? And
don't
why?
be shy. Leave a comment.
There you go. Yeah. All right, Jim. Take us on home.
All right. See you next week.